What's going on, guys? This is VinylicPuma, back with another Borderlands 2 video, and today I figured we could go over what I think are among some of the best Seraph Vendor guns, weapons, and gear in the game. Now, before we start, the criteria to have a specific item appear on this list is that it must be purchasable from the Seraph Vendor or Seraph Crystals Shops throughout all of the difficulties, including Ultimate Voltage Mode. Before Ultimate Voltage Mode, you can usually buy almost all of the Seraph items from the vendors. However, after True Voltage Mode, the items that the Seraph vendors carry are more limited and restricted. So the main thing we'll be focusing on today are Seraph items that you can only get from the vendors in Ultimate Voltage Mode, rather than just the best Seraph guns, weapons, and gear. With this criteria in mind, there are about 14 items that you can acquire across all of the 4 Seraph vendors from each of the DLCs, and I've gone ahead and picked 8 of what I think are some of the most useful or best. But without further ado, let's go ahead and jump into this list with number 8, and that is going to be the Seeker Assault Rifle. While I must admit that I don't like this weapon and I would consider it to be one of the lousiest assault rifles in the game due to its inability to crit, its poor fire rate, and its underwhelming DPS, the Seeker can actually be fairly useful at taking out flying units. The ability for the Seeker's projectiles to home in on an enemy makes hitting those pesky surveyors at Digistruct Peak a little bit easier, and since those enemies don't really have that much health in the first place, the Seeker can be used to take them down fairly easily. It also doesn't hurt that the Seeker works surprisingly well against some of the other weak but difficult to hit flying units that you may come across in other areas of the game, and can serve as an interesting alternative to the flak or shotgun. With the right setup, you can actually make the Seeker work somewhat well as a general-purpose assault rifle. However, I would caution you to be wary about trying to shoot this thing at a cluster of enemies, because the homing bullets seem to have a mind of their own, and they will occasionally go towards the enemy that you didn't intend to shoot, rather than the one that you intended to shoot, and that can certainly be frustrating. While I wouldn't rush out immediately and get your hands on one of these, and I also wouldn't recommend you get one of these to replace some of your other and much better explosive weapons, the Seeker might be nice to have, and if you want it, be sure to pick it up from the Flamerock Refuge Seraph vendor in the Dragonkeep DLC. Before you do though, I'd recommend you pick up some of the other weapons on this list first. Number 7. The Shadow of the Seraphs Relic. Out of all of the Seraph relics, I think the Shadow of the Seraphs is the most useful. What it does is provides the player with a percentage chance to fire twice, and essentially is basically like Zero's Two-Fang skill in relic form. As you might guess, the Shadow of the Seraphs can be used in conjunction with Zero's Two-Fang effect to get the effects from both the stack, and provided you have a Shadow of the Seraphs that's of sufficient level, along with an unequaled professional class mod, you can achieve a 100% chance of firing twice, which can prove to be very useful. Much like Zero's Two-Fang though, the Shadow of the Seraphs tends to work best on weapons with lower fire rates, and when selecting weapons, try to select something that's got a fire rate of 10 or lower before and after any percentage-based fire rate boosts, which, based on my experience, usually tends to be anything with a fire rate lower than 5. Something else that's worth pointing out is that you may like how the Shadow of the Seraphs / Two-Fang effect plays with Jacob's weapons, as these guns' semi-auto nature allows 2 shots per trigger pull, which can yield some pretty impressive fire rate, especially on pistols, assault rifles, and shotguns. Ultimately, I would say if you're looking to get the most out of Two-Fang on Zero, this relic is a must-have, and if you want it, be sure to stop by the Seraph vendor in Flamerock Refuge to get your hands on one. Number 6. The Florentine SMG. So, the Florentine is one of 2 weapons in Borderlands 2 that's actually dual elemental, with the other being the Cullen SMG from the base game. Both weapons are pretty similar, except, and most importantly, the Florentine doesn't actually self-slag the user, making it a much more viable weapon to actually use, especially in Ultimate Voltage Mode, where the effects of slag are just more potent all around. The downside to the Florentine when compared to the Cullen, though, is the Florentine's increased ammo consumption. Rather than firing just 1 shot, you're often firing 2, which can potentially cause you to blow through your ammo that much faster. Plus, and as for the gun itself, the shock damage component is naturally not as effective as a purifier or corrosive effect on slag, and when compared to other plasma casters, the Florentine splash damage only affects the slag portion of the damage that you're dealing. Because the splash damage only affects the slag portion of the damage that you're dealing, you may find that your conventional shock plasma caster may actually be a little bit stronger. Not to mention if you're playing a character that relies on grenade damage bonus like Axton, pumping your grenade bonus skills in addition to equipping a Grenadier class mod only provides an immaterial bonus with the Florentine when compared to your standard shock plasma caster. After all, you're only boosting the slag component of the damage, which was already pretty low to begin with. At the very least, the Florentine can be a great alternative to having some sort of offhand slag, as you can simply fire it at an enemy and then have them slagged after a few shots. If you would like to try one of these out, be sure to get a Florentine from the Seraph Vendor in Flamerock Refuge, as it's a nice weapon despite the issues with its splash damage. Number 5. The Crossfire Grenade mod. If you're having a hard time getting your hands on a slag bouncing Betty or a slag bouncing Bonnie, you may find it's much easier to pick up a slag Crossfire. Functionally, the Crossfire is almost identical to the bouncing Bonnie, in which you get your standard side-firing bullets like you would on any Betty grenade, in addition to some grenades that spawn and explode for the grenade's duration. I guess the idea here was to make a more offensively capable bouncing Betty grenade. However, since most Betty grenades are primarily used by the community to slag bosses, I think you'll find that the Crossfire is probably better suited to that purpose, especially when compared to something like a magic missile or a conventional slag weapon, which can't keep raid bosses slagged for very long. The one thing you'll need to be careful about are those spawning grenades, as they can hurt you if you get too close. Thus, you'll want a low-level version, and preferably you'll want to be pretty far away when the grenade actually goes off. Fortunately, as long as you have some Seraph Crystals, all you have to do is start the DLC in normal mode, walk or drive over to the Seraph Vendor, and you should be able to acquire a Crossfire if you have about 120 crystals. So if you only have the DLC completed on a higher level difficulty, you won't have to go through completing the entire DLC on normal in order to access the Seraph Vendor. Like I said though, if you want a slag bouncing Betty and you don't mind spending some Seraph Crystals to get one, the Crossfire is a great option. Number 4. The Seraphim Assault Rifle. While it suffers from a couple issues like low accuracy, slow bullet speed, and high recoil for a dull weapon, the Seraphim is actually quite powerful and ammo efficient. For the sake of comparison, the Seraphim is actually about on par with a dull E-Tech blaster with better ammo consumption and less of a penalty on its crit damage, making it a much more attractive option. Also, and unlike its legendary sister weapon, the Varrock, and most dull E-Tech blasters, you don't have to worry about horizontal projectile patterns while aiming down the sights with the Seraphim. And I think you'll come to find that the overall tighter groupings are more similar to most conventional non-unique assault rifles, which is definitely nice. Admittedly, I do wish the Seraphim came in more elements, however, I think you'll find that the fire exclusivity works well, since you only really need to farm for one with the ideal parts and prefix, rather than 2 or 3 different weapons. If you can, I'd recommend you try to get a deep Seraphim, as that will help improve the Seraphim's projectile speed, as well as try to get a Seraphim with all dull parts, as this will help tame the Seraphim's above average recoil and help improve the burst count. Ultimately, the Seraphim is a pretty nice Seraph assault rifle that you can just buy, and if you want it, be sure to visit the Seraph Vendor at Oasis in the Captain Scarlet and her Pirate's Booty DLC. Of all of the purchasable items from that DLC, I think the Seraphim is easily the best. Number 3. The Meteor Shower Grenade mod. To be honest, I'm kind of surprised the Meteor Shower was added to the game, as it's basically a slightly stronger and much easier to get version of the legendary bonus package. Specifically, the Meteor Shower can be bought from the Seraph Vendor in the Badass Crater, while the bonus package has to be farmed from Boom Boom or be purchased from a Torg vending machine. Beyond that, the Meteor Shower is capable of sporting a higher grenade multiplier than the bonus package, making it a much more ideal variant if you're looking for the best damage or if you want a slightly better radius. so despite the fact that you may have to wait a little bit longer to get some Seraph Crystals to buy a Meteor Shower, it's certainly worth it due to its slightly superior attributes. Otherwise, if you've used the bonus package, it's basically a lot like that. The initial grenade explodes like a normal MIRV, however each MIRV spawns a second child MIRV which also explodes. As you can imagine, this can get pretty powerful, and the additional multiplier provided by the Meteor Shower usually always improves the damage. Overall, I'd say you can't really go wrong with this grenade, and while you might be able to find some more powerful or useful grenades in later parts of the game, the Meteor Shower is certainly no slouch, and it's certainly worth getting the Seraph Crystals to be able to purchase one of these things. Number 2. The Lead Storm Assault Rifle. While it might not seem like it at first glance, the Lead Storm is one of the strongest assault rifles in Borderlands 2. Even though it's a spinning gun and you'll need to give it some time to fully rev up to reach its maximum DPS potential, you can achieve some high damage output thanks to its special effect, which allows the initial projectile to split into 3 unlisted ones. As you can imagine, this could potentially triple the damage of each shot you fire, and given the weapon's already fairly low ammo consumption of 1 per shot, and its fairly high fire rate, the effect is definitely useful, if not a little bit overpowered. It also doesn't hurt that since the Lead Storm's split projectiles are unlisted, each split projectile ends up getting full amp damage from the B shield, which allows your damage to be that much greater, assuming that you can keep your B shield fully charged. To be honest, I'm kinda surprised that Gearbox decided to make this assault rifle purchasable, as I would say that the Lead Storm is definitely better than the Hawkeye, which normally has to be farmed from Veracitus. Between the crazy unlisted projectiles, high rate of fire, and the ability to come in any element, the Lead Storm is pretty hard to beat, even if I wish it had some of the Hail Assault Rifle's abilities like passive healing, as well as the ability to deal splash damage. All in all though, the Lead Storm is a phenomenal assault rifle, and if you want it, be sure to visit the Seraph Vendor at the Lodge in Hunter's Grotto in the Hammerlock's Big Game Hunt DLC. It really is a great weapon, and it's an even better one if you pair it with the B. Number 1. The Antagonist Shield. It's actually kind of surprising that one of the better shields in Borderlands 2 can simply be purchased from the Seraph Vendor in Flamerock Refuge, and unlike many other shields which fit within a certain class like Turtle, Adaptive, or Absorption, the Antagonist is in a class of its own and possesses a number of unique abilities. The Antagonist provides a combination of damage reduction and high capacity, along with the potential to launch balls of slag at attackers, making them much easier to take down, as well as for the chance to deflect enemy bullets back at enemies at increased damage. The combination of all of these properties makes the Antagonist very useful and versatile, as you're getting a great balance of defense and offensive capabilities. Compared to most other shields, even among some legendary shields, the Antagonist is arguably better due to all of these wonderful properties. I think my only complaint with the Antagonist is that the slag homing balls have the potential to slag the user should they enter cover or go behind a wall at an inopportune time. But to be fair, it's not an extremely common occurrence, and as long as you give yourself a second after getting hit before going into cover, I think you'll find that it really isn't that big of an issue. Like many of the other purchasable Seraph items from the Dragon Keep DLC, all you need to do to get this one is simply visit the vendor in Flamerock Refuge. This is a shield you're definitely going to want to pick up, so if you only pick up one of the items on this list, be sure to pick up the Antagonist, provided you have enough crystals. Otherwise guys, I think that's going to wrap up this particular video. If you liked this video, feel free to leave a like, click the bell so you can be notified when I upload more videos, and as always, and again, thank you all so much for supporting this channel. Take care, and I'll see you all in the next one.